Hello, and welcome to another episode of Plastic Surgery Unfiltered, a podcast at the intersection of healthcare, business, and the beauty industry. I'm your host, Dr. Armando Davila. I'm joined today by Kristen Rosati, my PA. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good day?
Yeah.
Good holidays?
Busy holidays.
Busy holidays.
Yeah.
Today, guys, we're talking about, our podcast topic is Beyond Instant Gratification, Why Experience Still Matters. Loaded topic.
Loaded. Can't wait.
So, Kristen, so the big topic today is a couple articles that we were reading on the business side of two big companies or two big industries that have been shifted from kind of the restaurant industry, where convenience started to kind of overplay its hand. Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of throw in the introduction here. I'll start with Starbucks. You know, Howard Schultz, which was longtime CEO of Starbucks, is the one who is credited with bringing Italian-style coffee houses to the U.S., and it shaped Starbucks into kind of a global icon. And he started with the idea that coffee houses were a third place or a third space between home and work. And he served as CEO multiple times, trying to, like, not only when he grew the company, but when the company started to kind of falter. And then you have Kevin Johnson, who succeeded Schultz in 2017 and kind of pioneered this movement of Starbucks into mobile ordering and pickup. And a lot of people drink Starbucks. I'm sure you have Starbucks sometimes. You know, I don't know, you're not a big fan.
I'm not a huge
not
fan.
Not a fan, huge fan. But, you know, as someone who, my wife's a huge Starbucks fan, and, you know, the loss of third space or the third place was evidently visible in the brand as you get developed. And we started to really move away from Starbucks, where to the point where we bought our own coffee makers at home and we wanted a more kind of personalized experience. And how you had this huge kind of problem. In 2025, Starbucks has had, even stretching to 2024, 6 consecutive quarters of flat or same-store sales declines. And, you know, they've had a ton of layoffs and restructuring because essentially they've lost this kind of brand identity. I don't know, I guess just start there. What do you think kind of went wrong with Starbucks and the convenience factor?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I got to participate in the Starbucks evolution when I went to Pitt as an undergrad. That was 2002 to 2006. That's kind of when Starbucks hit the East Coast, and we had a Starbucks here on Forbes Avenue, and that was the place to be. That was like the fourth space, if you consider the library at college, the third space. That was kind of like the fourth space, right? Okay. And so I have really fond memories of going, you know, books splayed out all over the table, drinking my highly caloric peppermint mocha. And so I understand like the initial concept with you know, the third space and the place to go. On the other hand, I feel like even when I started working here again, you know, the same Starbucks is still in place. I remember I was working a Saturday doing some injecting and I had some time. And so I took a walk up Forbes Avenue and it was like a cafeteria, like a madhouse. I mean, there were just 20 people standing there waiting for their drink. And to me, it was just such a negative. It's just not my thing. I didn't think I should order on the app ahead. I didn't know. I mean, I waited for half an hour for my coffee drink, and I didn't want to sit there. I just wanted to come back. But it was just a horrible experience. And I think that, you know, the new CEO has been trying to recreate the third space concept again to drive business back to that. But it's just interesting to hear you talk about it, because I think about my life in coffee shops and how that's evolved since college. And I think that Starbucks too, it's evident because a lot of their previous like in-house coffee, they've converted into mobile drive-thrus. Correct. And the line is like always crazy long. Yeah. So I don't know. To me, the initial purpose of the like the coffee house was that third space thing, and to me, like, I feel like the quality went downhill, and maybe the processes weren't well thought out. Maybe they were with the mobile ordering. I don't know. I just know as a consumer, I had a really hard time whenever I went and had to order and wait. And
yeah, I mean, like, the newer CEOs did when they moved into mobile ordering. Naturally, there was COVID, which kind of threw everyone for a loop, and we'll talk about that briefly. We're going to talk about that the second part of this, which is Grubhub, and how they did explode sales, in the shift, but it's you have to feed the beast of the investors, right? And so they're seeing flat sales, and it's sort of like you've capped out at this ability to deliver like mobile quality. And it reminds me, I think we talked about this at a previous episode about how when the Starbucks people wanted to unionize the employees, they didn't want to unionize for they wanted some higher wages, but it wasn't about just money, right?
Okay.
Like they were complaining about things like letting us write custom names on the cups again, get rid of the stickers that go on the cups, let us wear our own flair on our aprons, just return to this like coffee house feel.
Sure.
And that's what they were complaining about. And it's like, gosh, it takes a really blind and deaf like CEO to say, I'm going to shut down a union because what they're asking for is quality of life things that actually improve the customer experience.
Sure.
And so, they really kind of went off the rails. But I think that the consumer, right? I mean, it is the CEO's job to see through that, but the consumer also drives the company's behavior. And so I wanted to kind of go on to talk about Grubhub, right? And I'm sure, how often do you use Grubhub, I guess? Not that much?
Not that much. Probably maybe 3 to 4 times a month.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's considered a lot. To me, that's not a crazy number.
I mean, you read the article I sent to you from The Atlantic, and it's the title of the article is "The Innovation That's Killing the Restaurant Industry." And I think that this is about, it's about food delivery platforms, and it's about how these platforms have quietly changed the restaurant industry. So it's not just like how we're consuming food, but it's also how the restaurants are being used, period. So it went into the idea of COVID and how obviously they had to pivot during COVID in this mobile ordering, and how Grubhub, which actually was the original, and now DoorDash has taken the seat at the number one, and how dining used to be about the atmosphere, the experience, the hospitality, and it used to be a place where family used to go and gather. And now convenience has become the dominant value, and so restaurants have turned essentially into fulfillment centers like Amazon rather than cultural spaces, and the loss of another third space in our world.
Lives, yeah.
Like I mean, you're always spending time with family, right? And it makes me think how, like, if you wanted to take your family to eat at a restaurant, like, where would you go these days?
I mean, that's a tough one because we're limited by where we live too. But I don't know if I could answer that.
Okay.
Like, it's tough because we went out to eat last weekend. I went with my in-laws and my husband and my child, and we went to the Central Diner, which it's in Robinson. It's a great little spot. We like the people who own it. They have reliable food, but I always say to my husband, like, we don't go out to eat for the food necessarily. Like, I think we cook pretty good food at home. We go out to eat so that we can sit down and have a conversation with our family or our guests. Or it's about the experience. To me, it's not about the food.
Correct.
Right. Like,
and people are paying a lot of money for these delivery things, especially in a strapped economic industry. You'd think that places like Grubhub and DoorDash would be struggling. They're not. I mean, people are paying like $40 for their McDonald's. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
They're paying $40 for their soggy McDonald's and then complaining about the price, when they could, I guess, McDonald's is hard because I don't think McDonald's is a third space, but it's changing the way these restaurants are being created and operated. So most new restaurants you see will now have a line for takeout orders and then like the dining room space, and they've shifted the operations. But I very much think that's going to go the way of Starbucks here, right? Where you're going to see a collapse of that space. And I have a similar story to your Starbucks story from my med school training. So we went to my wife and I went to med school in Chicago, and this was during what I call the rise of the craft cocktail boom. Before then, there wasn't that kind of concept. Craft cocktails were kind of developed in these like early 2000s. And you saw this rise of what's called the gastropub.
Oh, yeah.
And so high-end cocktails, higher-end food in a kind of casual comfort environment. And those really did feel like third spaces, right? Not stuffy like Michelin restaurants, yet like,
not fine dining.
Not fine dining, but really good food,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And how those spaces have now, like I go now to Chicago now, and those spaces have all become essentially fulfillment centers. And you still have the high-end Michelin restaurants still kind of doing their thing, but the rest have kind of gone the way.
I know, but as a consumer, I have to say, like, we have fed the beast because I am even guilty. Like, when we order we order DoorDash. If we order DoorDash, like, I'm even very critical of the container that the food is in. Like, did the restaurant pay attention to, like, I don't know, it just, like, I get soup and I got a salad or something. Like, did it travel well? Is it packaged appropriately? Like, I think we're guilty of it because we partake in it,
Sure.
you know?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, the consumer is asking for a certain thing and the companies are pivoting, but there is this quiet behind the scenes loss of the thing that maybe we didn't realize we were losing as it happens. And so I think that's the focus here is the kind of patient experience when we start to translate it back into the healthcare industry. One of the things that emerged in COVID in our healthcare industry is virtual consultations, which has reshaped the landscape of how you see your doctor. From a fundamental standpoint, it sounds nice, right? Like, going to the doctor is time consuming. You have to sit in the waiting room and the doctor runs late. Like, I'm always running late, because I take a lot of time with my consults. And you essentially like this kind of convenience, right? On the same hand, doctors were like, hey, this is great. Like, I can get through more patients. I can get through more charts. I can simplify my processes. But now it's starting to rear its head. There are, you traverse Reddit, like the residency boards are talking about how, like the residents, talk about how they are constantly now dealing with, these messages and these communications outside of the virtual platform, because the virtual platform doesn't lend itself to a good experience with the patient. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm all for the convenience and being able to offer something to help patients, especially if they're out of town or like if you're sick and you don't really want to go to the doctor's office. On the other hand, though, it has to be well thought out. It needs to be, I think it can open the door for a lot of other things in healthcare that are maybe not good experiences, right?
Yeah. I just, there's a, I'm sure you were taught this during PA school, which is, it's like, what is it? The exit door syndrome, like that.
Oh, your hand on the knob.
The hand on the knob thing, where you like, you ask questions. You're like, is there anything else? And then like you go to leave, and then there's always the most important information in the entire visit is with the hand on the doorknob, because the patient suddenly realizes this is their last chance to sort of get what is really bothering them off their chest, right? And so we see this in our office here all the time. And you just don't get it in the virtual, because what happens is you just like click X and they're gone. Yeah, and there's too bad, right? Yeah. And so there is something to be said. And our office has, people have asked, why don't we have virtuals? And we have resisted, because to me, the virtual platforms did not provide the patient experience I wanted. And so I refused.
Yeah.
And one of the things is we finally found a platform, I think, that works for us. And so go ahead.
And it wasn't an easy search. I mean, I think we went through 3 or 4 previous platforms that all fell short of our expectations. And some of our patients who may be listening may have experienced some of those. We had audio issues. We had video issues. We had trouble with photos. It's like we went through the rigmarole of finding a good platform.
Yeah. I mean, I think we deployed 4 different ones, and that doesn't include the like 6 or 7 that I test vetted that never even made it to deployment. Because one of the things that was really important to me is that the patient experience feels seamless, that whether you're waiting in the room here or waiting in a virtual waiting room, they feel kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
And that the pipeline feels the same for the patient, right? And at our office, right, patients come in, they get their history, they get their photos taken, which is our diagnostic tool. Again, I've mentioned that, like a CT scan, and we couldn't find a system that replicated that process. It also sucks, when you're on I'm sure patients who have done virtuals have experienced this, where you log into the room, like the Zoom room, and the doctor isn't there yet because they're still on the call with the previous person, right? And when you're here in person, well,
you can see what's going on. Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. What do you think is to test bed ourselves? What do you think is some downside of this, or how do you think this is going to evolve, especially with the rejuvenation or spa industry?
I see some pitfalls, especially with we have our Illuminex service line, which is our laser and light based service line down in our Center for Rejuvenation. I've talked to you about this. To me, I think that it is important to see people in person for those consultations. A lot of the therapies that we prescribe are based on patient skin tone and scars and things like that. And to me, I think that it's important that you see those in person so you can get a better feel for that. I think maybe that's a shortcoming down in rejuvenation, that different lights, different shadows, you can't really get a very accurate assessment on someone's skin tone and quality from a virtual visit.
Yeah, I guess if you're in the business of selling someone something that they don't need, it doesn't really matter. So I'm sure that there's plenty of places that go okay, well, sure, the virtual is good because
just come on in.
We'll
treat whatever.
Yeah. And, but we want to make sure that the service actually matches what the patient needs. And for us, that it requires an in-person visit.
I mean, it's important to us. It goes with our ethos, right? We're not going to try and sell you something that you don't need, and we want to really help people and address their concerns. So to me, I could see the flip side, right? Where a private equity would just do 100 virtuals a day and try and bring in as, pre-sell people something based on that appointment and bring them in and maybe pull a switcheroo, or, I could see the potential for profit, if you are not true to your morals, right?
Yeah, I think if you don't stay with the company values, and I agree with you, right? I mean, you see this actually already, right? Where the consultation or the virtual consultation is actually being done by a salesperson, a care coordinator first, rather than the provider, and then you see the provider after once they've been sold, and they're working off of a rubric. And the reality is that the rubric isn't about clinical decision making, and they can't actually do that by law, right? Because it'd be practicing medicine.
Yeah.
Now, I think let's take the positive. One of the things I think is a big hurdle for people is a fear of the rejuvenation or beauty industry or plastic surgery industry. How do you think that this will help here?
I mean, I think it gives you an opportunity to have a face-to-face discussion with a patient, and you've taken some barriers away, right? They can do it from the comfort of their own home. Maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable. They're not having to get naked in front of you, and I think just having that initial dialogue and interchange where you have a chance to build some trust is helpful. And then maybe when they come in, they are already kind of a little bit further along in their journey, right? I mean, I think that's probably a nice positive for it.
Yeah, I think that you see a lot of fear, and especially in this market where, this isn't Miami, this isn't LA, this isn't New York, where sort of it just feels normal to kind of get some of these procedures. I think a lot of patients come in and they feel kind of judged by even wanting something to make themselves feel better, or to kind of evolve themselves to a better version of themselves. And again, a lot of them have put in a lot of work, where they've lost a lot of weight, they've done a lot of exercise, they've done all this stuff, and they still feel scared to enter a space like this. And I do think virtuals could help, reduce some of that fear of being judged, being sold to, being unfamiliar with the medical space. It is daunting. I mean, even me going through it myself and practicing it.
You went through it, and you were, I mean, I have not gone through it, and that part says more about me than anybody else. But when I was taking your photos, you were very
anxious about it.
Anxious, yes.
And so, I think that is where we want to create that space and that experience for people, So to me, it actually is how I'm evolving it to be an extra space. Like I actually think it's going to be our third space where you're not quite ready to enter the true space of the plastic surgery office. We're going to have this third space where you can kind of join us, meet us halfway, and so that's what I want to encourage people. I think we're offering this for is if this is something that you've just been thinking about or unsure about or just have questions, normally you just go to Google or you go to GPT now and it tells you a bunch of stuff. I want to make it easy for people to just be able to get a hold of someone who actually
straight to the source
knows what they're talking about, And I think this also is being seen how people are evolving in the spa industry. I had a patient the other day who, again, just went to the closest med spa to their home, right? And the very first thing they did was they offered, a permanent injectable, Renuva, which is a great product, but a permanent injectable on the first time meeting someone. And you probably can imagine where the story goes from there. And then this patient is desperate, saying they've been mutilated. What can I do? And I go, I can't do anything. You let this person inject a permanent injectable into your face. And obviously the things they told the patient were not scientifically based, did not make any sense. There was a lot of lies or I don't know. I don't think they were intentionally lying. Maybe they just didn't know.
Sure.
But, you want to be able to kind of travel. You want to be able to seek out a reputable source. Sometimes it's hard. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think that removing barriers for patients is important, especially in this industry. And, I just encourage people to come to the professionals, right?
What would you say to other people in the beauty industry who are considering something like this, where you don't want them to lose their identity? And what would you say to us, as we're looking forward to the future, if you're in the CEO shoes, what do we have to do here to not lose, our folks, to not become a Starbucks, to not become a DoorDash situation as we deploy this? I mean, I think that,
you always have to keep one eye on your company values and we have to stay true to ourselves. I think that, we have we've test bed a lot of different products, and I like our final workflow that we have for this. I think we have to take patient feedback seriously. I think that we have to take our staff feedback seriously. I think there has to be some intermediate checks and balances to make sure things are still going appropriately. We have limited the number of slots of our virtuals so that we don't become, just a high throughput virtual only practice. We still do, for patients who are serious about moving forward, we still do require them to come in person. So, I just think checks and balances along with periodic check-ins, making sure that we stay true to ourselves, that type of thing.
I mean, I like it. I think that you, like you said, anchoring our purpose, the why behind, back to Simon Sinek, what is the why? We had our meeting this morning. We did a couple checks, why did we do this again? And anchoring it in that purpose is going to be important as we move forward. And I also think we're trying to enhance the in-person experience as well. Really differentiate for the consumer. We have this virtual for the people who want that experience. We have this in-person process if you want that experience. Sure. And these are distinct. You'll end up at the same place at the end,
sure,
but they are distinct and you get to choose.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that we still offer in-person consultations as well for the consumer who maybe has a little more experience in cosmetic and plastic surgery, who's a little bit more serious about moving forward. Those are the people that we still hold our space for our in-person consultations.
Yeah, people who have done a little bit more research and are kind of ahead of it.
Right.
But I do akin it to kind of this intermediate. I think I'd like to sit us at the kind of gastropub level where we have sort of the line, and then we're going to have the in-person dining, and we're going to have those two run simultaneously. I really want to avoid getting to the Starbucks level or the DoorDash level.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to keep checking it out. So
yeah,
it's exciting launch. As people kind of look at everything. I mean, all this is live, so people can go ahead and book these appointments. And I'd love feedback for all the patients watching of how we're doing and what we can do to improve your experience. So thanks again for joining us, guys. I don't have a topic for next time yet, but
I'm sure you'll find something.
I'll find something. There's going to be something good in the Atlantic, or I think there was a good one in the Economist. So we'll see. Well, thanks again for joining, everybody. I'm Dr. Davila. This is Kristen Rosati, PA, and everyone have a nice start to their new year.